Hello and welcome to my inaugural YouTube premiere live. That's right, I'm live. Well, not really live, but you know what I mean. The idea for this premiere live is to push me that little bit to hopefully transition into doing live crafting sessions with you, my crafting friends. And for that reason, I've decided to call these sessions Crafting Friends Together. Not quite ready to go live at this moment, so I thought trying one of the premiere would be a way to test the waters and see if you like it, if I like it, and I'll be in the chat with you so that we can have some back and forth with each other. We can have a laugh and we can talk about not only what we're watching on screen, but maybe what you're up to in your crafting journey. And I'll also be available to answer any questions that you might have. Now, hopefully you were able to catch the video announcing this premiere live, because in the description box for that video I included the information about this project I'm going to be doing, which is called the Never Ending Card. So I've given you the measurements for the card, for the mats and the layers, and that was my hope that you would go ahead and prepare ahead for this session, and that you could craft along with me. As I said, it's called a never-ending card, and I'll show you why, and it will be quite apparent in just a moment, because when you open it up, even though it looks like a gatefold card to begin with, it actually goes on and on and on. So it never really ends, so it's never ending. And though it might look a bit complicated, in fact, I thought it was going to be complicated myself when I first learned how to make these, but it's not really. And having this opportunity to be with you in the chat to answer any questions that you might have, because if I've not been clear about something, on screen, then hopefully I can answer any questions that you have. And if you aren't able to catch it live, then you have the opportunity to leave any queries or any remarks in the comments below. And with all that being said, in just a moment I'm going to play a short Crafting Friends Together intro so that you have an opportunity to grab any last-minute supplies that you need, or maybe get your tea, coffee, or your soda, water, wine even, and get ready to craft with me. And the never-ending card is coming up. Stick with me. I'll show you how it's done. help save a little bit of time, I've pre-cut all my pieces for the card and for the mats and layers. And I have 4 pieces here. For this card, which is going to be a 6x6 card, I've cut the 4 pieces to 3 inches by 6 inches. Now you can make this card any size you want. The rule is that whatever the length is, then the width needs to be 1/2 of that. And then you'll score at 1/4 of the length at both ends. And I'll show you that in a moment. But again, you're going to start with these 4 pieces that are cut exactly the same size, 3 by 6. So if you want to do yours that way, then you'll just do as I'm going to show you now. The scoring is going to be at whatever 1/4 of an inch, of 1/4 of the length. So in this case, 1/4 of the 6 inches is going to be 1.5. So we're going to score it at 1.5. You can just turn your card round and score it again at 1.5, or you could score it at 4.5. Now, another tip about this card, because it needs to bend back and forth, a good thing to do is to flip it over and redo those score lines on the other side. So, the 1.5 and the 4.5 on both sides. And that will help to keep your card from cracking and make it easier to bend back and forth. So again, we'll do 1.5, 4.5, flip it over, score it again at 1.5 and at 4.5. Repeat that on the remaining pieces. So all 4 of these will be scored exactly the same. So let's say you were making a 5x5 card. If you were making a 5x5, you would have cut your cardstock to 2.5 by 5, and you would score at 1.25 on either side. Since this is our 6x6, we're scoring at 1.5 and 4.5. And again, turning it over and scoring it again. And I think I missed this one, so I'll go back in there, do that. Next, you want to fold and burnish these. Now, what you want to do is fold it and burnish it, and then fold it back on itself again, and repeat that. And you can do it 2 or 3 times. And that will help to soften those fibers up and make sure that it is more or less bendable from that point on. So, we've got the first of those 4 scored. Do the same on these. Right. And now that you have all 4 of these scored, how this is going to go together is these 2 pieces, you just lie flat like that, and then these pieces are going to be placed on top, but they're going to be in the opposite direction. So where these are horizontal, these will be vertical. and they're going to go on here like that. For the glue, we only want to put it in 4 places, and that is in the top corners there, and in the bottom corners on this piece. So if you think of this as piece number 1 and this piece number 2, put them at the left and right corners, at the top, and then the ones at the bottom. Also, you don't want to go any further than 1.5 inches down, because that is the width of this score line here, which is going to be, if I can show you that there, since that's going to be essentially fitting like that, only like there. You don't want your adhesive going past that 1.5 inch mark. So on this, you could, and we can just rub those marks out later, just take a little pencil mark and put it there so that you don't go any further than that 1.5 inch. Do the same on this, coming up from the bottom, 1 1/4, or 1.5, I should say, 1.5, just there, and 1.5. Now I can use liquid glue on this, in which case I'll have to give it a little bit of time to dry, or you could indeed use double-sided tape. I'm going to go ahead and use my liquid glue and place it here. You don't have to go crazy, and you don't want to go past that score mark either. Now, what I'm going to do is just match those up for now, bring over my other 2 pieces, and starting with one of them, I want to place it here at the top. Get that all lined up, making sure that those are flush, those edges there are flush, and then match the other like so. Okay, and then you could come in with your bone folder and give that a good press. Now for the other side, and you want to be sure that you do not overlap here, so they can more or less sort of meet together, but you don't want them to overlap. And then we'll be able to fold that back and forth. I'll give that just a little bit of drying time, and in the meantime I'll show you the mats and layers. What you'll need are 8 of each of these. So you'll need 8 pieces that are cut at 2 3/4 inches square if you want to use a matte and a layer. If you just want to have a layer and no matte, then just cut them at this size, and you won't have to cut them the other size, the layer size. So 2 3/4 inches square, 8 of those. Then you need 8 of these that are cut at 1 1/4 by 2 3/4. And then for the small mat, you need 1 1/4 inch square. So 8 of each of these, again, 1 1/4, 1 1/4 by 2 3/4, and 2 3/4. So these are now going to be 1 inch. These will be 1 inch by 2 1/2, and then finally you'll have 2 1/2 inch squares. So 2 1/2, 1 by 2 1/2, or 1 1/4. Yes, 1 by 2 1/2, and 1 inch square. And I'll have all the measurements available in the description box below. I apologize for my voice. I've got a bit of a tickle, I think, but I'll try to soldier on here. I'm going to go ahead, while that glue is drying, put my mats and layers together. Now, you don't have to do this at this point. If you don't know how you want to decorate it yet, you might want to put this out and perhaps have a play with how you want your papers to go. And you don't have to be symmetrical with them. You could have them all different kinds of patterns. It's all up to you. But this is what I've chosen for mine. So I'm going to put this layer on this piece of black mat, like so. Okay. And I've got another in this pattern. I'll just do it in the same way. Because I often get lots of glue all over my fingers, and on occasion ink as well, Something I do quite often is use a scrap piece of paper or card, or usually anything I have close to hand, to place on top so that I can go over that and keep my fingerprints off of it, as well as the oil from my fingers and the glue as well. So you can just sort of use that as more or less a little shield for your glued down pieces. So those are all done. So we've got 8 of the larger squares, we've got 8 of the rectangles, and we have 8 of the small squares. Card in now, and this has had a little drying time, so hopefully it's not going to just split apart and slide all over the place. But I'm still going to be a little gentle with it because it will need a little while to actually dry. To decorate this, we're going to start with this sort of orientation where it's like a gatefold card. So a gatefold card being that you have cut it the front so that it just comes together like that, like a gate. And for the front, we've got these 2 3/4 inch squares. We could have something like this, maybe even like that. I quite like that, I think. And then your rectangles, and in this case I've cut them all out of the same pattern paper, so they would go like that. You can see the transformation that's already occurring. I hope you're able to keep up with me. Remember though that I will be in the chat, so if you're watching this during the premiere live, I will be there to hopefully answer any questions that you have, or you could leave your questions in the comments below. Now I'll get these down, and while I put those pieces in place, we can have a little chat. I do hope that you're enjoying this and that it's something that you might like to see in future. And as I said, I'm trying to work up my courage to actually do a live crafting session, because I think it would be loads of fun to actually craft with you in real time, and we could do it together. And that's why I've actually decided to name these sessions as Crafty Friends Together. So there's my first 2 squares down, and now comes the rectangle. And then of course we can really fancy this up with more decoration, other layers. We could have some die cuts, some sentiments, whatever we like on top of these pieces. It's a fun little card. I haven't made it in quite a while, but I remember one Christmas I made quite a few of these to send out to friends and family. And I had to be sure that I actually let them know what they were getting so that they wouldn't be a bit confused by where to start. But actually, after you get going, it pretty much makes sense. So this does make a delightful little Christmas card, as well as for any other occasion. Right, so this our first side finished. And again, I'm going to go in with my card so that I can put a little pressure on there without getting it all mucky. So, there we have it. Now, how this opens is it opens like this. And at this point, you want to go back in with your bone folder and give it a good press. Now, if you don't have a bone folder, you could use a ruler or the edge of maybe your scissors, as long as you didn't put the blade down onto it. But just something to give that an opportunity to go back and forth with ease. So now you have the second panel. Again, we're going to have two squares here. And in this case, I think I'm going to go back to the roses on here. Now, for the inside here, you're going to have your 4 little squares like that. You don't decorate this, even though it might seem like that's what you want to do. You don't do that, because when you open this out again, you will have gaps if you were to put panels in here. So you only decorate the corners. The squares go in here. Now this would be really a nice card if you want to attach photographs to these squares, or to some of them at least. Would make a nice little gift as well. Or you could have stamped images on here, or stamped sentiments, whatever you like. And as I said, you could just have a play before you actually start gluing everything in place, just to see what you, or what appeals to you, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So, next I'm going to put the little squares down. And it's a bit of cutting, you know, for the first little bit, to get the mats and layers all cut, but it doesn't take an awful lot of cardstock and papers to make. And so this was a good little project for when you want to use up any of your scraps, or maybe some of your 6x6 pieces, which is what I've done with these. These are papers that I've had for a while, and they are a 6x6, so I had plenty to spare even after cutting all these little pieces out. So what would you decorate this card with? To be with maybe some mirror card, or perhaps, as I said before, maybe make it into a Christmas card. And if you don't have any papers, what you could do is even cut your decorative paper from magazines. There's nothing to say you can't do that, especially if you're just trying it out for the first time and you'd like to more or less have a test run. You can just use some old magazines that you find images that you like. That is that panel done. Now, the next thing is you want to take this top one and fold it back and to the back. This one you fold down and to the back, and again go in with your bone folder, and now you have this cross type configuration. And this is the way that's going to eventually look. So you need to keep in mind that when that closes up, these squares, you'll still be able to see half of them, right? So if you have a sentiment on them, I would suggest you not put a sentiment on these squares. Save them for either the ones on the front or these here, because it will break up the wording. So it's just a suggestion. You don't have to do that. But again, those go to the back like so, and we'll put this down. Now you get to see the benefit of really folding back those score lines over and over, because that helps this to move a lot better. And it's also getting a little bit bulkier now, and for that reason I would not suggest you put your mats and layers on the actual card base before you put the base together, because it's just going to get too bulky, and you want it to be able to be flat when you start to put it together like that. So we've got those. So that means that these pieces are going to be the squares again. So we have those. And really, it seems complicated, but once you get going, you realize it's much simpler than it would seem at first glance. And of course, just take your time. You don't need to be in a rush, and that's the beauty of crafting, when you just get in the moment so that you're more or less in the zone, and the rest of the world just sort of melts away. And that's why it is such a therapeutic hobby. So just these two left. And I hope some of you have already cut your pieces out and are crafting along with me. That is the whole idea of doing these lives, to encourage you to have a go yourself. Some of you might be much more experienced crafters than I am, so it's nice to be able to share, I think, with each other. And if I can get to the point where I could do some lives, it would be nice to have other paper crafters in the chat who could help out and share their experiences and their tips and tricks, because there are no set rules really in paper crafting. I mean, so much of it is really just down to personal preference. So there is our third one. Now we're ready for the last, and this is going to be the final pieces here, and then we'll just have our rectangles on here like that. That's more or less the back of the card, but of course you can start this card really at any point, because it just, as it says, it never ends. It just goes on and on and on. And you also hear this card referred to as an infinity card. So I guess if you're a Buzz Lightyear fan, you might want to call that an infinity card rather than the never-ending. Right. It's some fussy cutting, and if you don't know what fussy cutting is, it means taking, like for example, this butterfly here and cutting round it. You could leave a border if you wanted to, but you would just cut round it like that until you had the whole image removed, and then you can use it as an embellishment. So I'm going to start putting these down and decide then what else I want to do. So I'll probably put this on a high speed at some point so it can move along a little faster. Now the thing to remember is when you're putting anything on these panels that you don't go beyond the edge here where it's going to fold back. Okay, let's take a look at the never-ending card. So, as I said, it'll stand like that. And then you would see that forever and always on display like that. And then you would open it again and again and again and again and again. I hope someone showed up for the live and that we've had an opportunity to have an exchange in the chat, and that I could just have a bit of fun with you and answer any questions that you might have. But if you weren't able to catch this live and you caught it in the playback, then please, you can go ahead and leave me a comment and any questions that you have about the never-ending card, or indeed about my plans for future premiere lives or even live crafting sessions at some point, then I would love to hear from you. Subscribe to the channel. Be sure to hit the notification bell and select all notifications so that you don't miss out on any of my future premiere lives, or indeed any live crafting that I finally get the nerve to do. And I hope that you will come back again for more crafting friends together. In the meantime, please do stay safe and crafty hugs. Bye.